Hello guys, welcome back to my lessons. Today we're going to talk about menstrual cycle. So menstrual cycle meaning what happens before a woman menstruate. Like for a woman to end up menstruating, for her to end up seeing blood, what are the processes that happens and what are the hormones involved in that process. So I'm doing this also so that you can be able to answer that question that looks like a graph whereby they would show lines of hormones and they'll be asking you questions, so which hormone is this one and which hormone is this one. So for now, we'll be talking about LH, we'll be talking about FSH, we'll be talking about estrogen, and we'll be talking about progesterone. So these are the four hormones that are involved in the menstrual cycle, right? We're going to talk about the job or the function of these hormones and what do they do, where do they come from, what secretes these hormones, and then what is their job, right? So now let's look at this. So this here, it is a pituitary gland in your brain, right? Remember, glands are the ones that secretes or produce what? A hormone. So we have a pituitary gland in the brain. Another name for pituitary gland is hypophysis. So what happens is this pituitary gland, it secretes the hormone FSH, which is called follicle stimulating hormone. Now, when it secretes this hormone, what happens? This is a woman's ovary. This is an ovary, so the hormone FSH will go to the ovary to stimulate the production of follicles. So follicles will be produced because of this hormone. The hormone is FSH, is secreted by what? By the pituitary gland. What is the job? It stimulates follicles to be made. So these are the follicles. So as the follicles are here like this, what happens again is that the follicles will develop into Graafian follicle. One follicle will develop into a what? A Graafian follicle. So as it becomes bigger like this, it is called a Graafian follicle. What causes the follicle to become a Graafian follicle? It is the hormone FSH, the same FSH that stimulated the production of follicles, right? And then after it matures into Graafian follicle, now the Graafian follicle will secrete a hormone. The hormone is estrogen. And then where does the estrogen go? It goes to the uterus, to the womb where the baby is kept. What does it do? It keeps the place thick, vascularized, and ventilated, right? So it prepares the uterus for pregnancy, right? So that's what estrogen does. Where does it come from? It comes from a Graafian follicle, right? And then what happens to this Graafian follicle? And then again, pituitary gland, it secretes another hormone called LH. LH is luteinizing hormone. What does this LH do? It stimulates ovulation. It causes the Graafian follicle to burst and release an egg, right? That process of the egg being released from the Graafian follicle is called ovulation. And then as ovulation happens, the egg enters into the fallopian tube. Now what happens to the follicle? What happens to the Graafian follicle after the egg? After it releases an egg, it turns into what we call a corpus luteum. So this is a corpus luteum, and then this corpus luteum will secrete a hormone called progesterone. And then progesterone, when does it go? It goes to the uterus. To do what? To do the same job as the estrogen. To keep the uterus thick, vascularized, and ventilated, ready for pregnancy. So estrogen and progesterone, they do the same job. They keep the uterus thick, ready for pregnancy. So progesterone, again, it maintains the pregnancy. If the woman gets pregnant, if the egg that is released in the fallopian tube meets a sperm and it is fertilized, the progesterone will keep being secreted by what? By corpus luteum. To do what? To maintain the pregnancy. And then we have LH and FSH. Remember we talked about those. They were released by what? By pituitary gland. FSH to do what? To form follicles, also to develop follicle into a Graafian follicle. And then we have LH. What does LH do? It stimulated that Graafian follicle to burst and what? And release an egg. And then that Graafian follicle, before it released an egg, it secreted estrogen to do what? To prepare the uterus, right? So now they will give you a graph like this one. So there will be like the diagram below shows the changes and in the concentration of hormones in the blood and uterine membrane during menstrual cycle, right? So they will give you the number of days from 0 perhaps to 28, right? They'll be like to 28. And then this is endometrium. This is in the what? In the uterus. This is showing the uterus, endometrium. Endometrium is in the uterus. And then we'll have lines C and D. This lines shows hormone. So the hormones, these hormones, as you can see, that they go up and down, and I'll explain why they do that. And then we have the circles in the middle. This circles represents the follicle. As you can see that the first circle is very small. It represents the follicles in the ovary. As it grows bigger, it represents a Graafian follicle. And then here you can see that it has released an egg. It has broken, right? It released an egg, and after it released an egg, this thing that looks like a pumpkin, now this is a corpus luteum. So the Graafian follicle, after it releases an egg, it changed into this corpus luteum. And the corpus luteum is the one that secretes progesterone, right? And as you can see that it shrinks, it goes back, it's shrinking, this corpus luteum. So I'll explain what does that mean. And then we have A and B. Those are hormones as well. Remember in this topic, we talk about 4 hormones. Hence, we have A, B, C, and D. So how do you know whether A, B, C, and D is LH, FSH, estrogen, and progesterone, right? So what you're going to do, let's look from day 0. Day 0, day 1, let's look at day 1. What's happening in day 1? Which hormone is above the other between A and B? The one which is above the other is B, right? B is above A at day 1, at day 2, and then from day 3, then and B, it goes down, and then A goes up. And then look at day 14, exactly at day 14, A, it is at its highest level, right? It is making a V shape at day 14. Right, so this must tell you that at day 1 to day 2, because B is higher than A, so B is FSH, because from day 1 to that day 2, that's when those follicles are being made, right? And the follicles need what? They need FSH. Hence, FSH is higher than A at that point, right? And then now, what happens? From day 3 to day 7 maybe, and we have LH is higher than A is LH. So how do you know that A is LH? Because at day 14 it made a V shape. It is going up than B now. The V is very is narrow, right? So and it is higher than B, so A is LH, right? So as the follicle there is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, because remember the follicle will do what? Will secrete an estrogen. So between C and D, which one is the estrogen? The estrogen is C, because C is higher than D at this point. So D is progesterone. Because when the follicles are produced and we have Graafian follicle, no progesterone is produced, or maybe less progesterone is produced. And then more estrogen is the one that is produced. So C is estrogen, right? Most of the time they put the lines of estrogen and progesterone close to each other, and they put LH and FSH close to each other. So as you can see that C is, I said it's estrogen, right? But also C at day 13 and 14, it is making a C shape. How do we know whether C or A is LH? Which one is LH? Is A, because the V there at A, it is narrow, and at C it's not a V, it's a C, right? So that's how you see that is LH. And then look at now look at what happens to the graphene follicle. It releases an egg, right? With the what? With the help of LH. Hence LH, it's at its highest level there at day 14. And then LH goes down after that, because now corpus luteum is produced, is made, right? Now we have that pumpkin, that corpus luteum. Corpus luteum will do what? It will secrete progesterone. So let's look at C and D. Remember I said C is estrogen, D is progesterone. Can you see that D is higher than C from day 17 to day 24? Now D is higher. It is more than D is higher than C. So it means that D is progesterone, because why? At that point, this corpus luteum, this thing that looks like a pumpkin, is secreting progesterone. Hence, D is higher than C at that point. And then let's look at these hormones. What's happening? The progesterone, which is D, after day 24, it goes down. Why does it go down? Because the corpus luteum, the pumpkin, is shrinking. Right, it's shrinking. It means that there was no fertilization, no pregnancy, right? So menstruation happened. And then look at day 28. Let's look at A and B. You can see that B is becoming higher again. Why? Because it is FSH. It is preparing for the next cycle, right? For the next cycle, so that it can develop a follicle into a graphene follicle, so that a new ovulation and new menstruation can happen in the next month. So let's look at the questions. Identify hormone A. Hormone A is LH. How do you see that? At day 14, it is at its highest level, and the V, it's forming a V at day 14. Hormone D is progesterone, because from day 18 to day 23, it's higher than estrogen, which is C. Why is it higher? Because there is a pumpkin, corpus luteum, that is secreting progesterone. So D is progesterone. Describe the relationship between the level of hormone at C and the endometrium from day 9. Let's look at day 9 to day 13. What's happening from day 9 to day 13? What's happening to the level of hormone C, estrogen? You write it in point form. C is estrogen, and from day 9 to 13 it rises. Why does it rise? Because estrogen is produced by the graphene follicle, because at that point, can you see the graphene follicle before it bursts? Graphene follicle. And then what is the relationship between this hormone and the endometrium? So as C is releasing, as it is being released, as estrogen is being released by the graphene follicle in the endometrium, it makes the endometrium thick for what? To prepare the uterus for pregnancy. So number 3 says, explain why the level of hormone B increases after day 23. After day 23, what increases? That is B, that is FSH. Why does it increase after day 23? Because it is preparing for what? For a new cycle. It's preparing for a new cycle, because the cycle has because that B, you must also write the names. That B, it is FSH, so that you can get a mark, because they haven't given you that it is FSH. So if you write it, you're going to get a mark. As you can see that it is 4 marks. Make sure you write as many things as possible when it's 4 marks.